Hey everyone, welcome back. This week we're gonna take a look at the Italian beef sandwich from the Hulu show The Bear. We're gonna walk you through it step by step and how to make this sandwich from scratch. Includes the bread, the giardiniera, the beef, the broth, and ends up in an amazing sandwich. So let's get started. And first we're going to start with the giardiniera, which we have to prepare a day before because those are pretty much pickled veggies, and as longer our veggies can chill and sit around in that pickle juice, the taste gets only better. Like, just give them time, let them sit, let them chill, and trust me, you will be rewarded for your patience. So we're gonna do that at least the day before. We need 300 grams or 11 ounces of carrots, the same amount of cauliflower. We're gonna add 3 to 4 stalks of celery, 3 to 5 cloves of garlic, and I added like a half a chili in there. If you like it spicy, you can add 1, 2, 3. I don't know. If you're not as much of a sissy as me, then you can add more, but yeah, I don't like it spicy. And as a quick disclaimer, either wear gloves or wash your hands before you go to the bathroom or touch your face after cutting those chilies. And we added also 4 to 5 sweet peppers to it and cut all of that into small little bite-sized slices and mix them together in a bowl before we're gonna place them into our mason jars, and we're going to add the pickle juice on top that we're gonna prepare now. For our brine, we're gonna mix together 400 grams or 1 3/4 of a cup white distilled vinegar and 200 grams and 3/4 of a cup of water and 24 grams and 1.5 tablespoons of salt. Mix that together, let it boil, and as soon as it's boiling, you put it over our veggies. Then you close the mason jar and put it in the fridge until the other day. And now we take a quick break. If you like this video so far, please consider subscribing and maybe even leave a comment. Let us know what video you want to see next. It helps us a lot with the algorithm and helps us to keep making those videos for you guys. And now let's start with our Italian bread. And we're going to start with 1 cup or 260 grams of lukewarm water, half a tablespoon or 6 grams of instant dry yeast, and we're gonna add a little sprinkle of sugar into it and then mix the whole thing together and put it aside for around 10 minutes. And now we're gonna mix all the dry ingredients together. First, we're going to start with 400 grams or 2 3/4 of a cup of bread flour. We're also going to add 8 grams or 1/3 of a tablespoon of salt, and we're going to add 10 grams or 1/3 of a tablespoon of honey. Now, put all of that through a strainer, make sure everything is nicely incorporated. If you have Diastatic malt powder, you can add 8 grams or half a tablespoon. Not necessarily needed, but it helps us to get a better taste at the end, but you don't necessarily have to. Now mix all of it together with a whisk, and then we go over to our stand mixer. Now a stand mixer is not mandatory, but if you don't have one, hey, your forearms are your best friend, but I'm lazy, so I use mine. By now our yeast mixture should have a little bit of a foam on top. If yes, we're gonna add that into our dry mixture and let it knead for around 10 minutes. After that's done, we're gonna add 1 1/3 of a tablespoon of olive oil or 20 grams of olive oil. Adding it later on will help us to develop more gluten and get a more stronger bread, which is important if we want to dip the sandwich later on. So after another 10 to 15 minutes, we'll have this nicely formed dough. Next, we need to grease a bowl. Just, you can use normal oil as well. Add your dough in there and cover it with plastic wrap before you put it aside for around an hour or until the dough doubles in size. The amount of dough we just made should be enough for 3 loaves or 6 servings of Italian beef sandwiches. And because of that, we're gonna split our now risen dough into 3 equal pieces. There's not necessarily a need for it to weigh it, just pretty much eyeball it, make sure you kind of get it right, and make 3 equal pieces with your dough divider or dough scraper. Not sure what those things are called though. But yeah, just use that thing or use a knife and cut it into 3 pieces before we make nice round balls. Just use the back of your hand and pretty much form it in like circular motions until you have a nice round ball, as you can see right here. Then do that for all 3 and roll them later on into small little sausage torpedo shapes before we cover them again for 15 minutes just to give the gluten some time to relax. Now after that, we are going to stretch the dough into a rectangular shape. So that's probably around 20 centimeters or 8 inches wide and probably half of it in height. Slowly roll the dough up and close the seam underneath after every turn. And at the end, when you're done with it, make sure that you really seal it well and you flip the dough over, that seamed side is on the bottom. Roll the dough a little more, and by doing that also make the ends a little more pointy, and do that until you have a length of 30 to 40 centimeters or 12 to 16 inches. Assure that your seam is still on the bottom and put it on a baking tray covered with parchment paper and some cornmeal if you have any. If not, don't worry, it's not mandatory. It just helps to give a little more texture to the final bread. Repeat that step 2 more times and add those loaves on your baking tray as well. Cover it with a damp towel or with another baking tray and let it sit for another hour or until those double in size, which you can see right here. Use a sharp knife or even better a razor blade and cut it once through the whole bread. That allows it to spread out evenly and gets a little wider, which helps us a lot with assembling the sandwich. Bake them for 30 minutes by 375 Fahrenheit or 190 degrees Celsius and you will get those buns. Now put them aside, let them cool, and we will start with our meat. First, we have to make the broth, and for that we will use beef and cook that to get all the flavor extracted to it. Usually I would recommend using 6 to 8 pounds or 3 to 4 kilograms of beef shank, but we couldn't get any, so we ended up whatever we could get, which was around 1 pound of cheap taco beef and another 2 pounds of bones with the bone marrow inside and 4 pounds of beef ribs. I know I would usually not use ribs for something like this because you can make a lot better dishes out of it. Was a bit last minute and that's why we did it. Cut all of it in small pieces and put it on a baking tray before we're gonna roast it for probably 30 minutes and flip them in halfway in by 450 degrees Fahrenheit or 230 degrees Celsius. Now when everything is brown and like really nicely brown as you could see here, put them into your Instant Pot and scrape off all that brown stuff from your baking tray with some hot water. This will help us to get a really nice brown rich color to the broth and also helps us to get a more complex flavor to it, so definitely do that. If you don't have an Instant Pot, just use a normal cast iron and let it simmer for like 5 to 6 hours, works as well. We're gonna add 2 liters or 2 kilograms of water and then just close the Instant Pot and let it slow cook for 5 to 6 hours. Everything we have done so far, I would do the day prior to you want to eat the sandwich. After the broth is done, just put it in the fridge and let it cool overnight. The other morning you are able to just take off all that excess fat, makes it a lot easier. And now we're somewhat on the home stretch. For the actual Italian beef that we put into the sandwich, use around 1 kilogram or 2 pounds of top round roast, season on all sides with salt and pepper, leave them bigger, we did here, maybe just cut them in half, roast them on each side until a golden brown, just sear them in your cast iron, and then we're gonna add all the spices that makes it an Italian beef sandwich. First, we're going to add half a cup or 120 milliliters of red wine, add that to the hot pan and deglaze the bottom of it to get all that brown stuff off. Then we're going to add 3 tablespoons of 45 milliliters of Worcestershire sauce, and we're also going to add 2 cups of 470 milliliters of our homemade beef stock. Now, next, we need to add all of our actual seasoning, which are 3 tablespoons or 10 grams of Italian seasoning. If you don't have any, just use half basil and oregano. That's what we did here. Then we're also going to add 36 grams or 2 tablespoons of sea salt, 19 grams or 2 tablespoons of ground black pepper, 3 grams or 1 teaspoon of paprika, 3 grams or 1 teaspoon of red chili flakes. And you're also gonna add 5 grams or 2 teaspoons of onion powder, as well as 5 grams or 2 teaspoons of garlic powder. Now you can just let the beef simmer until it reaches 140 Fahrenheit or 61 degrees Celsius in the middle. Measure your temperature quite frequently, maybe every 10 minutes, because as we tried it first, we actually overcooked our meat. So really be careful there, you would regret it. In the meantime, we're gonna finish our giardiniera. First, pour out all the liquid that we had in there. Best case, you measure it and then you fill it up with 75% veggie oil, like a canola oil, and 25% of olive oil. Close it and put it aside. And by now our meat should be done. And if you want, you can just wrap it in plastic wrap so the meat juice will stay in there, and you can put it in the fridge for a while to let it cool down so it's easier to cut later on. Strain all of our broth and then we're gonna add some more salt, or better than bouillon paste, which gives it like the special kick to it. You want this whole thing to be more on the salty side. And now next we have to cut our beef. Try to cut it as thin as possible. If you have a deli slicer, use that one. I've seen people using the mandolin for that. I have not tried it, but apparently it should work. You can give it a try. And then you're gonna add the beef into your broth for probably a few minutes just to really get some of that taste. Make sure it's warm. And then we're gonna cut our sandwich. Don't cut it all the way through, just cut it like half. We're gonna add the beef that we just dip in our broth to it. You can, if you want, either add a little bit broth underneath. We opted out to do that and just put it on top, or either dip the whole sandwich. And on top of the beef, you're gonna add the Giardiniera veggies that we had prepared earlier. And those are all the ingredients you need for the Italian beef sandwich. But now one important part of it is that you have to wrap the whole thing in parchment paper after you either dipped it, what we do here. If you do it, use a bigger container. This was a little bit of a mess, and just wrap it in parchment paper. That helps to hold the juices together and really distribute it nicely throughout the sandwich. That's really important, so do that. And that's it. That's the Italian beef sandwich. So it's a lot of work, I know, but trust me, it's definitely worth it. It tasted amazing. If you recreate this, again, be careful with the beef. Like I said, we overcooked our first batch, so you don't want this to happen to yourself, so measure better a few times for the temperature. And if you like this video so far, again, please consider subscribing. It helps us a lot and it helps us to make those videos more often. So let us know which video you want to see next, and thanks a lot for watching this one, and enjoy this amazing sandwich right here.